Hello everyone and welcome to another video by BioTeach, this time looking at Unit 3 on the BTEC Applied Science. This is another externally assessed unit which is usually completed in the first year of the course, so on the foundation year. I've created another video to give an overview of the assessment on this unit, so please click the link that's just flashed up on your screen to watch that before you watch this one. So this particular video is looking at how you can write a hypothesis. This is largely relevant for question 4 of the paper, which usually gives you an experiment scenario, and you're required to write a plan that includes a hypothesis, a method, the apparatus list, etc. This question is worth 12 marks, so it's really important that you understand how to get those marks, and the hypothesis is usually the first thing that you would write. It's also an area where students lose most marks, as their hypothesis is too simple or does not include all the variables that they need to. So let's have a look at how we develop the hypothesis. All a hypothesis is an educated guess. You'll probably know some facts or be provided with some information which will allow you to predict what might happen in an experiment. Words like if and then are good to use when you first approach a hypothesis. You have to consider that one variable might be dependent on another. So for example, the growth of a plant is dependent on the type of fertilizer in the soil. So what I've done over here is given you almost titles of experiments. So the first one is the effect of pH on enzyme activity. The second is looking at the effect of surface area on the rate of diffusion. Then you've got the effect of light on the growth of plants, different fuels and the amount of energy that they release. And the last one is how changing the brightness of a bulb can affect the resistance of a light-dependent resistor. What I want you to do now is to pause the video and write down a hypothesis for each of these experiment titles and see what you can come up with. So the first one, which is asking about pH, you should have something along the lines of, as pH increases, the enzyme activity will also increase up to the optimum, and after the optimum, it will decrease. If you didn't mention the optimum pH, you wouldn't get the marks for the hypothesis, as the examiner wants to see that you know that the enzymes have optimum conditions within which they work. So this is what we call a slightly advanced hypothesis than your simplistic one. The second one looked at the effect of surface area, and so something along the lines of the larger the surface area, the faster the higher rate of diffusion. You could even put down because, so like have an explanation as to why you think that would happen. The third one is looking at the effect of light on the growth of plants. So if a plant gets more light, it will grow taller, or the higher the light intensity, the more the growth. So the one with the different fuels, it says different fuels and the amount of energy that they release. So you could say that fuels from X will release more energy than fuel Y, or something along those lines, that one might release more energy than the other one. So this is a comparative study, perhaps. And the last one, looking at how changing the brightness of the bulb can affect the resistance. As light intensity increases, the resistance decreases. So something along those lines would be okay to say. So moving on then is looking at the types of hypothesis. You should be aware of the different types of hypothesis that you may encounter and you may have to write. The first one is a simple hypothesis, a bit like the ones that you've just predicted. For example, saying that drinking sugary drinks leads to obesity. This is a prediction of two variables, but you're not really taking into account any other factors, such as diet or exercise, that could also contribute towards less obesity. The second one is a complex hypothesis, saying that overweight adults who value longevity or living longer, that's what we mean, and they seek happiness are more likely to lose weight and therefore feel a regular sense of joy. Here you have a relationship between two or more variables. That is a relationship between living longer, happiness, and the desire to lose weight. The third is an empirical hypothesis. For example, saying that roses watered with liquid vitamin B will grow faster than roses watered with liquid vitamin E. Here you're basing your hypothesis on some form of trial and error or a theory being put to the test. In the exam, you need to aim to get a hypothesis that's quantifiable. What I mean by that is state by how much something might change. So for example, consider what might happen if you have a 10-degree rise in temperature, or if you double the concentration of the chemical that's being used. How would the rate be affected? I think you can probably agree that the rate would be quicker, but then you have to go on to say by how much. If you can say that the rate will double or it will halve, for example, then that's what we're saying a quantifiable hypothesis is. So a bit more practice on writing hypothesis, and this time looking at quantifiable hypotheses. This first example says that when a 1 mole concentration of acid was added to 1 gram of magnesium, it dissolved in less time than when 0.5 mole concentration was added. What I'd like you to do is pause the video now to have a go at writing down a quantifiable hypothesis. So the first one here says the higher the concentration of acid, the faster the metal will dissolve. This might be something that you've written down, but unfortunately it's not a quantifiable hypothesis. This is still looking at a simple hypothesis, the relationship between the concentration of acid and the metal. You can argue that the faster bit, the word faster there, gives you some form of idea of the rate. It's probably better to say that as the concentration halves, the rate of reaction decreases by 50% or 25% or something along those lines. That makes it more quantifiable. The second example here is a lamp in a circuit was dim when there was 1 cell in the circuit. When there were 3 cells in the circuit, the lamp was very bright. Have a go at this, pause the video, have a go, write it down, and then I'll talk you through it. So you should have something down along the lines of the more cells in a circuit, the brighter the bulbs will be, or something along the lines of they will be twice as bright when twice as many cells are in the circuit. So that second part after the slash is the one that's a bit more advanced, it's a bit more quantifiable. Hopefully that makes a bit more sense now that we've talked through it. So, as always, I wanted to include some past paper questions to give you an idea of what question 4 would look like. So this first one is about diodes and conductions. It says that diodes are semiconductor devices and they only allow a current to pass in one direction in a circuit, so a forward direction. It talks about a potential difference at which the diode will allow the current to pass in the circuit, and that's called the threshold PD, or the threshold potential difference. So question 4 normally asks you to write a plan, but we're not going to do that. We're simply just looking at the hypothesis. So please pause the video now and just have a go at writing down a hypothesis for this particular experiment. Now, when you're writing the hypothesis, I would pay particular attention to the words that are in that red dotted box. Diodes only allow a current to pass in one direction. So if you had highlighted that, then perhaps your hypothesis would say the diode will not conduct at all in one direction, regardless of what potential difference is applied. That would be something that they would accept. The other thing that I would like you to pay attention to is the sentence just underneath that. The potential difference, or the PD, at which the diode will allow a current to pass in the circuit is called the threshold PD. That essentially means that there's a certain threshold that it needs to reach before it can allow a current to pass. So an advanced hypothesis would be something like, the other direction it will conduct, but only after the potential difference rises above a certain value or a threshold value. So both of these would contribute really well to giving you the advanced marks or the higher band of marks in this particular question. The next example I've got here is looking at plant growth. So it says plants use carbon dioxide and water to produce glucose and oxygen, and that process is known as photosynthesis. It goes on to say the rate of photosynthesis is affected by many factors, such as light intensity. The next sentence says aquatic plants release visible bubbles of oxygen gas into the surrounding water when they photosynthesize, and pondweed is an example of the aquatic plant. So if you pause the video now and have a go at writing the hypothesis for this, once you've unpaused it, I'll talk you through what's correct and the guidance that I would give you for this. Now, the key thing in this question is what's in that red box. You've been asked to write a plan to investigate the effect of light intensity on the rate of photosynthesis in the pondweed. So we're looking at the effect of light intensity on the rate of photosynthesis. What we could say is that the light intensity increases and the rate of photosynthesis increases. So that's fine. That's a simple hypothesis that you could write down, and it is acceptable, but it wouldn't get you necessarily the higher band of marks. If you pay close attention to what it says over here about the visible bubbles of oxygen gas, what you're expecting is that as light intensity increases, there's going to be a higher rate of photosynthesis. So that also means that there's going to be more oxygen bubbles that are released, indicating that the rate of photosynthesis has increased. So that there, the second box that's come up on the video, is what's giving you the advanced hypothesis. Of course, you can say the first box, and I would probably recommend that you do say the first box, but the second box will help corroborate your information a bit more, help give you a stronger hypothesis for the exam. So I hope that was super useful for everyone. I will be creating some more videos on Unit 3, so look out for them on my channel. Thank you so much for watching. If you've got any questions, then please leave me a comment below this video, and please check out the BTEC unit resources I've got as a playlist on my YouTube channel. Thank you so much. Bye for now.